This is FinRep Review Session 2 on General Economics, Chapter 2. We are going to deal with theory of demand and supply, and under this chapter we have covered meaning and determinants of demand, law of demand, elasticity of demand, price elasticity, income elasticity, cross elasticity, theory of consumers' behavior, indifference curve approach, meaning and determinants of supply, law of supply, and elasticity of supply. Now going on to the review questions. Question number 1. An increase in the price of a good causes A. An increase in the demand for the good, a decrease in the demand for the good, a decrease in the quantity demanded of the good, an increase in the supply of the good. Any changes brought out by price would mean a movement along the same demand curve. Therefore, an increase in price would bring out an opposite reaction to the quantity demanded. Therefore, the right answer is option C, a decrease in quantity demanded of the good. Question number 2. Which of the following would cause an increase in the supply of tires? So an increase in supply means that the supply curve shifts outward. So the options are option A, an increase in demand for tires, a decrease in demand for tires, an increase in the price of rubber used to manufacture tires, a revolutionary new method of production that allows twice as many tires to be produced from the same amount of rubber. So options A and B are demand oriented concepts, and option C, it's related to a change in the price of rubber. So it is not responsible for a shift in supply, it would only affect a movement along the same supply curve. Therefore, the right answer is option D. New methods of production will increase the productivity of rubber. Therefore, with the same amount of inputs, more rubber would be produced, which would shift the supply curve towards the right. The third question, a shift to the right in the demand curve for shoes could be the result of when demand curve is shifting to the right, it is due to changes in factors other than price. So the options are an increase in price of shoes, a fad during which it became fashionable to go barefoot, an increase in consumers' income if shoes are a normal good, the belief import quotas and shoes will be removed in the future, thereby causing a large fall in the price of shoes in the future. The increase in price of shoes would not shift the demand curve, and if it is not going to be fashionable to wear shoes and it is fashionable to go barefoot, the demand would actually decrease. And the belief that quotas will be removed in the future and therefore the price of shoes will fall in the future, so people will postpone their consumption, therefore current demand would fall and therefore the demand curve will shift inward. So the right answer is an increase in consumers' income if shoes are a normal good. So an increase in consumers' income, the consumer will buy more of the same good even if the price remains the same. The fourth question, supply curves do not shift if there is a change in the A. Number of sellers of the good, B. Technology used to produce the good, C. Price of the good, D. price of resources used to produce the good. So any changes in supply or a shift in supply is brought out by all other factors other than price. Therefore, only the change in price of good will not shift the supply curve. Therefore, the right answer is option C, price of the good. The fifth question, as you move down a straight line downward sloping demand curve, the price elasticity of demand A becomes less elastic, B remains constant because the slope is constant, C becomes more elastic, D is unit elastic the whole length of the demand curve. So this is a concept related to point elasticity of demand. So as you move downward a demand curve, you'll notice the elasticity ranges from infinity to zero. Or in other words, as you move along a demand curve downward, the elasticity goes on decreasing or it becomes less elastic. Therefore, the right answer is option A, becomes less elastic. The sixth question, if an increase in the price of paper leads to a decrease in the demand for pencils, then paper and pencils are. So when the price of paper is increasing, immediately the demand for paper would fall. And now we notice that the demand for pencils have also fallen. Therefore, we can conclude that paper and pencil are complements. So, an increase in price of one leads to a decrease in the demand of the other good. Therefore, both are complements. Option B is the right answer. The seventh question, if an increase in consumers' income leads to a decrease in the demand for good X, then good X is. So this concept is related to income elasticity of demand. So here we notice a situation where the consumer's income increases, but the demand for that particular good falls. So this happens in case of inferior goods. So as our income increases, people prefer to consume more of normal goods and more of luxuries. They like to reduce the consumption of inferior goods. So the right answer is option D, inferior good. Eighth question, which of the following is a property of an indifference curve? A, it is convex to the origin. B, marginal utility is constant as you move along an indifference curve. C, total utility is greatest where the 45-degree line cuts the indifference curve. D, the marginal rate of substitution is constant as you move along an indifference curve. So option B and D are the wrong answers because the marginal utility or the marginal rate of substitutions are not constant along the same demand curve. You have diminishing marginal rate of substitution as you move along the indifference curve, and the utility is not greatest at 45 degrees line. Therefore, the right answer is indifferent curves are always convex to the origin, and that is option A. The ninth question, when the price of a product is increased 10%, the quantity demanded decreases 15%. In this range of prices, demand for this product is A, elastic, B, inelastic, C, cross-elastic, D, unitary elastic. A change in price is only 10%, whereas the fall in quantity demanded is 15%. The change in demand is greater than the change in price. Therefore, we can say that this product is more responsive to a price change. Therefore, it is more elastic. The right answer is option A, elastic. The 10th question, cross elasticity of demand is negative for complementary goods, unitary for inferior goods, negative for substitute goods, positive for inferior goods. So cross elasticity studies the changes in price of one good that brings out changes in quantity demanded of a related good. So the price of one good, how it affects the quantity demanded of other good. So you'll notice that it is not unitary for inferior goods. It is not negative for substitute goods. So when we say substitutes, we can say it is tea or coffee. So actually for substitutes, you have a positive relationship. So when price of coffee increases, the demand for tea would increase because consumption of coffee would fall. Therefore, option C is not the right answer. Again, for D, it is positive for inferior goods, is not applicable. The right answer is it is negative for complementary goods. So, complementary goods, we can talk in terms of car and petrol. When price of petrol increases, the demand for cars would fall. So, option A is the right answer. The 11th question, which of the following would not be a determinant of demand? A, price of related goods. B, income. C, tastes. D, the price of the inputs used to produce the good. So options A, B and C are definitely determinants of demand, whereas option D, the price of inputs used to produce the good, is a supply related concept. Therefore, the right answer is option D. The 12th question, what will happen in the rice market if buyers are expecting higher prices in the near future? A, demand for rice will increase. B, demand for rice will decrease. C, demand for rice will be unaffected. D, supply of rice will increase. So when consumers are expecting a higher price in the future, they think it is an ideal time to buy more of that good in the present, in the current scenario. Therefore, the demand for rice will increase in the current period when they are expecting prices to increase in the near future. The 13th question, refer to the below graph. The movement from point A to B on the graph shows. So point A to point B, it shows that it is movement along the same demand curve. Any movement along the same demand curve is not brought out by an increase or decrease in demanded. Rather, it would address to the concept of increase or decrease in quantity demanded. But you'll find that at point A, the price is higher and the quantity demanded is lesser compared to that of point B. Or in other words, at point B, the price is lower but quantity demanded is more. So, a movement from point A to B, the quantity demanded has increased. Therefore, the right answer is option C, an increase in quantity demanded. The 14th question, when the price of a good or service changes, A, there is a movement along a stable demand curve. Demand shifts in the opposite direction. Demand shifts in the same direction. Supply shifts in the opposite direction. As mentioned earlier, any changes in price would not shift the demand or supply curves to the left or right. So, a change in price would mean a movement along the same demand or supply curve. Therefore, the right answer is option A. There is a movement along a stable demand curve. The 15th question, other things equal, when the price of a good rises, the quantity supplied of the good also rises. This is A. Law of increasing costs, B. Law of diminishing returns, C. Law of supply, D. Law of demand. So here we notice there is a relationship between price and quantity supplied, and they are moving in the same direction. So it is definitely the law of supply, and that is option C. The 16th question, refer to the below graph. According to the graph, equilibrium price and quantity are. So we have the demand and supply curve intersecting each other, and at the point where they intersect each other, the price happens to be rupees 5 and the quantity demanded and supply is 40. Therefore, the right answer is option C, $5 and 40 units of output. Now the next question, also related to the same graph, the 17th question, refer to the above graph. According to the graph, at price of $7, A, there would be a shortage of 40 units, B, there would be a surplus of 40 units, C, there would be a surplus of 20 units, D, the market would be in equilibrium. Now going back to the previous diagram, now we have already noted that the equilibrium price is $5 and equilibrium output is 40 units. Now we want to study the situation when the price is $7. Now when price increases from the equilibrium price of 5 to 7, an increase in price will induce the suppliers to supply more. So now they are willing to supply 60 units of the commodity, but an increase in price demotivates the consumers to consume more. Therefore, their demand shrinks from 40 units to 20 units. At price 7, quantity supplied is 60, but quantity demanded is only 20. So we notice here there is a surplus of 40 units of supply. So it's a situation of a surplus of 40 units. Option B is the right answer. The 18th question, the downward sloping demand curve reflects which of the following? The price is positively related to quantities supplied. There is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. There is a direct relationship between price and quantity demanded. When the price falls, buyers willingly buy less. Option A, the price is positively related to quantity supplied, is a supply related concept. Now definitely with regard to a demand curve, there is always a inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. That is, whenever price increases, quantity demanded would fall, or when price falls, quantity demanded would increase. Therefore, the right answer is option B. There is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. The 19th question, the law of demand implies that demand curves slope down, slope up, shift up whenever the price rises, shift down whenever the price rises. So the demand curve shows a inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. In other words, when one increases, the other would fall. Therefore, definitely, according to the law of demand, the demand curve will always slope downward. The right answer is option A, slope down. The 20th question. The demand curve for a normal good shifts leftward if A. Income falls or the expected future price falls. Income falls or expected future price rises. Income rises or expected future price falls. Income rises or expected future price rises. Now, for a normal good, when the demand curve is shifting towards the left, it means there is a decrease in demand and it is a unfavorable situation. So, definitely a fall in income alone can shift the demand curve towards the left. So, we can concentrate on options A and B. So, income falls, but we have now to pair up with the right future price expectation. So, whenever you expect the future price to fall, we will postpone the consumption, decrease current demand, and buy the goods in future. Therefore, the demand would fall. But when we expect an increase in price in future, then we would buy more of that commodity in the present and restrict our consumption in the future. Rather, we prepone the consumption of that particular good in anticipation of increasing prices in future. Therefore, the right answer is income falls or expected future price falls. The 21st question. Demand is inelastic if elasticity is less than 1, equal to 1, greater than 1, equal to 0. When we say demand is inelastic, we can say that it is not at all responsive to any kind of price changes. In other words, whether price increases or decreases, the quantity demanded remains the same. So we can say for any change in price, the change in demand is 0 or it is constant, or the elasticity is 0. So the right answer is option D, it is equal to 0. The 22nd question. The price elasticity of demand will increase with the length of the period to which the demand curve pertains because A. Consumers' income will increase. B. Demand curve will shift outward. C. All prices will increase over time. D. Consumers will be able to find substitutes. So when we say a long period of time, it gives the consumers sufficient time to alter their entire characteristic or nature of demand. So, when the time period is long, they'll be able to find substitutes that can best replace the goods that they are currently consuming. So, when the time period is very long, the consumers will be able to find more substitutes. So, the right answer is option D. Consumers will be better able to find substitutes. The 23rd question. Dakota is willing to pay $20 to see Independence Day for the 4th time. He finds a theater showing Independence Day for $5. Dakota's consumer surplus is $5, $15, $20, $25. Consumer surplus is nothing but how much the consumer is willing to pay and how much he actually pays. The difference between these two gives the consumer's surplus. So here you will notice that Dakota is willing to pay $20, but actually he is only paying $5. So the difference between these two, 20 minus 5, gives us $15 as the consumer surplus. So option B, $15, is the right answer. The 24th question. The price elasticity of demand generally tends to be A. Smaller in the long run than in the short run. Smaller in the short run than in the long run. Larger in the short run than in the long run. Unrelated to the length of time. Now here we are talking about the elasticity of demand, how it is affected by the time period under consideration. When the time period is very short, consumers are not more responsive to price changes because the time span is very short for them to respond to any kind of price changes. But in the long run, when the price changes are felt, the consumers are in a very comfortable position to alter their demand completely. Therefore, we can conclude that the elasticity is smaller in the short run than in the long run. So the right answer is option B. The 25th question. If two goods are close substitutes for one another, then we should expect the cross elasticity of demand between them to be A. Large and positive, B. Large and negative, C. Small and positive, D. Small and negative. When they are close substitutes, we'll notice that the price of one good influences the quantity demanded of another good in an inverse manner. So when price of one good increases, the quantity demanded of that particular good would fall, and consumers will start to switch over to the other substitutes which are available in the market. Therefore, the right answer is A. Large and positive. 26th question. If the price rises and total amount consumers spend on the good rises, then demand must be. So this is the outlay method. So here when price increases, the amount which they spend on the good is rising. So option A, elastic, B, inelastic, C, perfectly inelastic, D, perfectly elastic. So you will find it is more elastic because a change in price is bringing out a change in the total outlay of expenditure spent on that particular good by the consumer. 27th question. As long as the principle of diminishing marginal utility is operating, any increased consumption of a good, A, lowers total utility, B, produces negative total utility, C, lowers marginal utility and therefore total utility, D, lowers marginal utility but may raise total utility. Now coming back to the principle of diminishing marginal utility, it is a situation where as you consume additional units of a particular commodity, the additional utility which you derive from that commodity goes on diminishing. Or in other words, every additional unit of consumption of the good gives lesser satisfaction. After a point of time, the satisfaction becomes zero and later it creates disutility or it becomes negative. But only the marginal utility would fall but the total utility will go on increasing. Therefore, the right answer is option D. It would lower marginal utility but may raise total utility. 28th question. A utility contour or indifference curve shows all the alternative combinations of two consumption goods that can be produced with a given set of resources and technology, yield the same total of utility, can be purchased with a given budget at given prices, equate the marginal utilities of these goods and therefore make the consumers indifferent between them. So indifference curve is nothing but the locus of all possible combinations of x and y on consumption yielding the same level of satisfaction or utility. Therefore, the right answer is they yield the same level of total utility. 29th question. A market demand curve can be derived by adding all the individual demand curves vertically, horizontally, in parallel, any of the above as long as it is consistent. Now, what is market demand curve? At a particular price, consumer A might demand certain quantity of a good, consumer B might demand certain quantity of a good, and consumer C might demand certain quantity of that particular good. Now, to know the market demand, at that particular price, we shall add each quantity demanded by these three individuals. So, it is definitely a horizontal summation. So, the diagram also shows that it would be a horizontal summation of individual demand curves. Therefore, the right answer is option B, horizontally. The 30th question. The arc elasticity formula is used to estimate elasticity when the product is thought to be inelastic, the product is thought to be elastic, the demand function is known, there are two observations of price and quantity. Now, the arc elasticity is a contrast to the point elasticity or the normal elasticity of demand, because the point elasticity calculates elasticity at a particular point on the demand curve, but the arc elasticity measures elasticity over an arc of a demand curve or a movement from one position to another on the demand curve. So you will notice a movement from one point to another point on the demand curve will have two prices and two quantities in combination. So the initial point will have one price and one quantity, and the movement to the second point will again have one other price and one other quantity. Therefore, it would have two observations of price and quantity. Option D is the right answer. The 31st question. Matt bought 6 CDs last month when the price was $14. This month, when the price of CDs increased to $16, Matt bought only 4 CDs. Matt's price elasticity of demand is. Now here we notice that the price has fallen from $14 to $16. Therefore, Matt has reduced his consumption from 6 CDs to 4 CDs, and this method has used the arc elasticity formula. So the formula for arc elasticity is Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1 plus Q2 multiplied by the whole thing multiplied by P1 plus P2 divided by P1 minus P2. So here we notice there are two quantities and two prices that are involved. So P1 is the original price or initial price, which is 14. P2 is the change in price, that is 16. Q1 is the initial quantity demanded, that is 6, and Q2 is the change in demand, so that is 4. So applying this in the formula, we'll get Q1 minus Q2 as minus 2 divided by 30, Q1 plus Q2. Multiplying it with P1 plus P2, we get 10, and P1 minus P2 is 2. So ultimately, it would be of the form minus 2 divided by 30 multiplied by 10 divided by 2. So 2 and 2 gets cancelled. So the answer would be 3, or rather minus 3, because price and quantity are sharing an inverse relationship. So the right answer is option D, minus 3. 32nd question. The demand schedule shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied, price and quantity demanded, time and quantity demanded, time and quantity supplied. So the demand schedule always displays the relationship between price and quantity demanded. Therefore, the right answer is option B. 33rd question. Cross price elasticity of demand measures the response in the income of consumers to the change in price of goods, the price of a good to the change in the quantity of another good demanded, quantity of one good demanded when the quantity demanded of another good changes, the quantity of one good demanded to a change in the price of another good. So cross price elasticity studies the relationship between price and quantity demanded of two different commodities. Or in other words, how the changes in price in one commodity brings out changes in quantity demanded of the other commodity. Therefore, the right answer is option D, the quantity of one good demanded to a change in the price of another good. 34th question. The more substitutes there are for a product, the less price elastic the demand for the product is. The smaller the income elasticity for the product, the more price elastic the demand for the product is, the greater the income elasticity for the good. So when there are more substitutes are available, you will notice that even if price increases, the consumers would not respond much with regard to restricting their quantity demanded, because they do not have other substitutes that are available for this particular product. That is, when the price of this good rises, they are forced to buy this particular good, and they do not restrict the consumption of this particular good because substitutes are not available for this particular good. So if more substitutes are available, you will notice the price elasticity will be more. So consumers will find it more easy to switch over to other products that are available in the market. So the right answer is option C, the more price elastic the demand for the product is. 35th question. Economists use the term utility to mean any characteristic of a good or service which cannot be measured, the value of a product before it has been advertised, the satisfaction a consumer obtains from a good or service, the contribution a good or service makes to social welfare. So utility means satisfaction derived from consumption of a particular good or service. Therefore, the right answer is option C, the satisfaction a consumer obtains from a good or service. 36th question. Economists use the term marginal utility to mean additional satisfaction gained divided by additional cost of the last unit, additional satisfaction gained by the consumption of one more unit of a good, total satisfaction gained when consuming a given number of goods, the process of comparing marginal units of all goods which could be purchased. So marginal utility is nothing but how much of additional satisfaction a consumer gains by consuming one more additional unit. So the right answer is option B. 37th question. The law of diminishing marginal utility states that total satisfaction will decrease as more units of the good are consumed. The satisfaction from each additional unit of a good consumed will decrease. Total utility will become negative. Both the first and third answer above. So diminishing marginal utility means consumption of additional units of a commodity yields lesser and lesser additional satisfaction. Or in other words, the satisfaction that a person derives by consuming an additional unit of a commodity will go on decreasing. Therefore, the right answer is option B, the satisfaction from each additional unit of a good consumed will decrease. 38th question. Refer to the below diagram where XY is the relevant budget line. I1, I2 and I3 are indifference curves. The equilibrium position for the consumer is at any point on XY, point M, point K and point J. So a close observation of the diagram, we will find that the equilibrium is where the slope of the budget line and slope of the indifference curve must be equal. Or in other words, the indifference curve must be tangential to the budget line, and it happens at point K. Now, we need to know why not it be at point J or at point L. At point J and L, you will notice that the budget line and indifference curve intersect each other, and MRS and the slope of budget line and indifference curve are equal. The same thing holds good at point L also. But why compared to point J and L, point K is preferred? Or why is it equilibrium is at point where the indifference curve is tangential to the budget line? A movement from point J to K or from point L to K will improve the satisfaction or utility of the consumer, because point J and L are on indifference curve I1, but point K is on indifference curve I2. Or in other words, with the same income, point K is possible, which yields more satisfaction to the consumer. Therefore, why would the consumer choose point J or L, which yields them lower satisfaction than point K? So, the right answer is point K, and that is option C. 39th question. The slope of an indifference curve is the level of total utility, the price of the good on the vertical axis divided by price of the good on the horizontal axis, the quantity of the good on the vertical axis divided by the quantity of the good on the horizontal axis, the marginal rate of substitution. The slope of an indifference curve always would measure the marginal rate of substitution. Or in other words, in order to consume an additional unit of one commodity, how much the consumer is willing to sacrifice the other commodity. So we will notice that as you move down an indifference curve, the marginal rate of substitution would go on decreasing. Therefore, the slope of an indifference curve is always the marginal rate of substitution, and it is option D. 40th question. Marginal utility can be positive but not negative, positive, negative or 0, positive or negative but not 0, positive or negative and 0. And now a close scrutiny of the marginal utility curve. You will notice that it is positive and it falls continuously. When the total utility is increasing, marginal utility will be falling. And when total utility is maximum, marginal utility will be 0. And when total utility falls, marginal utility will be negative. Or in other words, marginal utility will initially be positive, it will become 0, then it becomes negative. Therefore, the right answer is option B, positive, negative or 0. The 41st question, where total utility is at a maximum, marginal utility is. So as described earlier, when total utility increases, marginal utility would fall. When total utility is at its maximum, marginal utility would be 0. And when total utility falls, marginal utility will become negative. So when total utility is at its maximum, marginal utility will be 0. That is option C. The 42nd question, the budget line shows the person's lifetime earnings, a person's budget and its limits, a family's budget and what it plans to buy for the year, only the affordable combinations of goods and services the person can buy. So the budget line means how his income is divided between the various goods under consideration at the existing price level. Or in other words, how much of combinations of goods he can afford with his current level of income. The right answer is option D, only the affordable combinations of goods and services the person can buy. The 43rd question, if two bundles are on the same indifference curve, then the consumer derives the same level of utility from each. The consumer derives the same level of ordinal utility from each, but not the same level of cardinal utility. No comparison can be made between the two bundles since utility cannot really be measured. The MRS between the two bundles equals 1. Indifference curve. Along an indifference curve, the consumer is indifferent between any point along the same indifference curve. Or in other words, any point on the indifference curve yields the same level of satisfaction or utility. So, any two bundles on the same indifference curve will yield the same level of utility. The right answer is option A. The consumer derives the same level of utility from each. The 44th question, which of the following is consistent with the law of supply? As the price of calculators rise, the quantity supplied of calculators decreases. Ceteris paribus. Option B, as the price of calculators rise, The quantity supplied of calculators increases, ceteris paribus. C. As the price of calculators rise, the supply of calculators increases, ceteris paribus. D. As the price of calculators fall, the supply of calculators increases, ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus means other things are held constant, or in other words, all other factors apart from price are held constant. So the law of supply clearly states a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied, or in other words, whenever price increases, quantity supplied would also increase, and whenever price falls, quantity supplied would also fall. Therefore, the right answer is, as the price of calculators rise, the quantity supplied of calculators increases, other things held constant. The 45th question. A graph showing the various quantities of a product that a single producer supplies at each and every price in the market is a supply schedule, change in supply, elasticity of supply. So we are here noticing that there is a link between the quantity supplied and the market price. So a graph showing relationship between price and quantity supplied is definitely the supply schedule. So it should be the supply curve. So if it is in a tabular form, it is a supply schedule, but if it is expressed in terms of a graph, it becomes the supply curve. So the right answer is supply curve and not supply schedule. 46th question. Which of the following would result in a supply shift to the left in the market for hot dog rolls? So here we are considering a shift in supply. So the options are an increase in price of hot dog rolls, a decrease in price of hot dog rolls, a decrease in price of hamburger, an increase in price of flour. Any changes in price would not bring out changes in shifts in supply. It would only bring changes in quantity supplied. But here we are considering a situation of a shift in supply curve, that too towards the left. So if you observe at option D, it says the price of flour increases. So flour is an important ingredient for making the hot dog rolls, and therefore when the price of flour increases, the cost of production of hot dogs would increase. Therefore, with the available resources at a particular point of time, the producer would not be able to supply more, or he has to reduce his supply because his cost of production has increased. Therefore, the right answer is option D, an increase in the price of flour. 47th question. All of the following are considered to be non-price determinants of the supply of a good except taxes, price of related goods, technology, number of buyers. So here we have to identify which are the options that are related to supply and which are the options that are not related to supply. So taxes definitely will affect supply, because greater the tax, lesser would be the supply, because tax will increase the cost of production for the producers. Price of related goods again will affect supply, because producers would want to produce that good which is highly priced in the market. Therefore, the supply of goods which are highly priced will be more, whereas the supply of goods which are lowly priced will be less. And the technology, level of technology will also influence the supply, because improved technologies will increase the supply and deterioration of technology would reduce the supply. But option D, the number of buyers, is definitely a demand oriented concept. Therefore, option D is the right answer. It is not related to, it is not a non price determinant of supply. 48th question. Price elasticity at a given price is not affected by the price of complements, the price of substitutes, the consumer's income, a change in supply. Price of substitutes, price of complements, and income, consumer's income, all affect the demand for a good. But a change in supply is a supply related concept, and that becomes the right answer. Option D is the right answer. 49th question. An elasticity coefficient of -1 means the demand curve is perfectly inelastic. The demand curve is perfectly elastic. The relative changes in price and quantity are equal. Expenditures on the good would increase if prices were reduced. So when you observe option A, the demand curve is perfectly inelastic. It means whatever the changes in price, the quantity demanded would not change. Or in other words, elasticity coefficient would be 0. Option B, the demand curve is perfectly elastic, which means with not much change in prices or with same prices, the quantity demanded goes on increasing or decreasing. Or in other words, the elasticity coefficient is infinity. Now option D, the expenditure on goods would increase if prices were reduced. That again is not a concept, a feature related to elasticity. The right answer is option C. -1, an elasticity coefficient of -1 represents unit elasticity. That is, a, a proportionate change in price brings out a equal proportionate change in quantity demanded. Therefore, option C, the relative changes in price and quantity are equal, is the right answer. The 50th question. Luxuries are distinguished from necessities by A. Number of substitutes available for each. B. The fact that luxuries have high prices and necessities have low ones. C. The high income elasticity of demand for luxuries and low income elasticity of demand for necessities. D. The absolute slope of the Engel curve. Now, when luxuries, in case of luxuries, when income increases, people would want to buy more of luxuries. Therefore, they are highly income elastic. On the other hand, necessities are low income elastic. In other sense, as income increases, it does not increase along with the increase in income. Demand for necessities do not increase along with increase in income. So therefore, the right answer is option C. The high income elasticity of demand for luxuries and the low income elasticity of demand for necessities is the right answer. We have come to the end of the review session 2 on general economics. I hope this session was useful and helpful and very clear to you. For any further enquiries and doubts, please mail us at queries@greymatteracademics.com. Have a good day.